Have you ever caught yourself reacting to something and wondered, why did I do that? You snap at a colleague over a minor mistake, then spend hours regretting it. Or you freeze during a presentation even though you've prepared thoroughly. Your friend seems energized by chaos while you need quiet to think. A family member makes decisions instantly while you need to analyze every angle. These aren't random quirks or character flaws. They're expressions of something far deeper, your temperament. Temperament is the invisible architecture beneath your behavior. It's the foundational wiring you were born with, the raw material that shapes not just how you act, but how you think, feel, and relate to the world. It influences whether you sleep easily or wrestle with insomnia, whether you eat when stressed or lose your appetite, whether you're energized by a crowded room or drained by it. It affects how you make decisions, respond to pressure, process emotions, and connect with others. In fact, there is hardly a function in life that temperament doesn't touch. This might sound deterministic, as though you're trapped by your wiring, but it's actually liberating. Once you understand your temperament, you stop fighting yourself. You stop wondering why you're not like everyone else. Instead, you begin working with your nature rather than against it, and that's where real growth happens. Tim Lahaye's framework, rooted in ancient temperament theory, gives us a map. But more importantly, it gives us permission to be ourselves while still becoming our best selves. Let's walk through this together, layer by layer, with stories that will likely feel like looking in a mirror. The invisible architecture, how temperament shapes everything. Imagine two people facing the same high-pressure situation. Amina, a sales director, receives news that a major client is threatening to leave. Her response? She immediately calls an emergency meeting, outlines 3 action plans, assigns tasks, and moves forward with decisive confidence. Her heart races, but she channels that energy into solutions. Her colleague Bala, equally competent, receives the same news. He feels his stomach drop. His first instinct is to gather all available data, review what went wrong, analyze every possible angle before responding. He needs time to think. His mind spirals through worst-case scenarios before he can settle on a path forward. Neither response is wrong. Neither person is weak or strong. What's different is their temperament, the fundamental wiring that determines how they process stress, make decisions, and take action. Temperament is distinct from personality and character, though people often confuse them. Your temperament is the raw, inborn wiring, the hardware you were born with. Your personality is how that wiring expresses itself in the world, shaped by experience, culture, and choice. Your character is the moral dimension, refined by your values and the decisions you make over time. You can't change your temperament, but you can absolutely shape how it manifests. That's the entire point of this journey. Lahaye identifies for classical temperaments: sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. But here's where it gets interesting. Almost no one is purely one type. Most people are blends, combinations of 2 or sometimes 3 temperaments. This blend creates tremendous variety in how humans experience and respond to life. Consider someone like Jane. She's highly sociable, talkative, energetic, and loves being around people. Classic sanguine traits. But she also naturally takes charge, gives direction, and sometimes pushes people forward. That's choleric. When things are going smoothly, her sociability draws people in and creates energy. But when pressure mounts, her choleric side emerges more strongly, and she wants to dominate, to control outcomes, to move faster. If she ignores her sanguine need for fun and rest, pushing herself relentlessly into achievement mode, she'll eventually burn out or become brittle and resentful. A CEO with a sanguine choleric blend might be exceptional at networking, building teams, and making decisive calls. But without awareness, they might overcommit, become impatient with slower processes, or create emotional volatility that unsettles their organization. With awareness, they can leverage their natural charisma and decisiveness while building in safeguards against burnout and impulsivity. The recognition that you're not pure is crucial. It means you're not trapped in a single box. It also means that understanding both your dominant and secondary temperament gives you real leverage. You begin to see which traits are truly core to you, and which ones surface mainly under pressure or in specific contexts. That awareness is the beginning of agency. The dual nature, gifts and shadows. Once you begin to locate your temperament and blend, the next step requires honesty, identifying both your natural strengths and your shadow side. This is where most people get stuck. We tend to be hyper-focused on our weaknesses, trying to suppress them, deny them, or fix them through sheer willpower. Meanwhile, we neglect or even feel guilty about our gifts. But maturity isn't about denying your nature. It's about embracing and stewarding both sides. It's about using your strengths wisely and proactively shoring up your weaknesses, not through self-rejection, but through intentional structure and support. Take someone with a melancholy temperament. The strengths are profound, deep insight, creativity, high standards, loyalty, and careful attention to detail. A melancholy person notices what others miss. They see the edge case in the software code, the flaw in the logic, the emotional undercurrent in a conversation. They're willing to sit with complexity and ambiguity until they understand it fully. They are dependable. When they commit to something, they follow through. But the shadow side is equally real. Melancholy temperaments are vulnerable to negative self-talk, perfectionism, analysis paralysis, and isolation. They can ruminate for hours on a mistake they made weeks ago. They can get so caught in what-if thinking that they never act. They can withdraw socially when they're struggling, which only deepens their spiral. Michael is a software engineer with a melancholy temperament. His team values his meticulous code. He's the person who catches the bugs others miss, who thinks through edge cases, who maintains quality standards. But sometimes Michael spends excessive hours rewriting code, fearing it's flawed, caught in an endless loop of refinement. His perfectionism, taken to an extreme, becomes a liability. He misses deadlines. He frustrates his team. Now here's the key. If Michael only fights his perfectionism by forcing himself to code faster, by pushing himself to just ship it, he might sabotage the very quality that makes him valuable. But if he learns to channel his strength, his deep insight and attention to detail, within healthy boundaries, everything shifts. He might time-box his coding sessions. I have 3 hours for this feature. He gives himself permission to finish and revisit later. He creates a code review process that lets him be thorough but not endless. He intentionally rotates between coding and other tasks to prevent stagnation. Michael's list might look like this. Strengths: analytical, detail-oriented, quality-conscious, patient researcher, loyal, dependable. Weaknesses: overthinking, self-criticism, procrastination in decisions, isolation, rumination. Then he puts guardrails in place. When a decision deadline arrives, he commits even if not 100% certain. He schedules social time, not as optional, but as necessary maintenance. He finds an accountability partner who checks in when he's been silent too long. This is what growth actually looks like. It's not about becoming someone you're not. It's about recognizing that your nature has both gifts and dangers, and building a life structure that maximizes the gifts while restraining the dangers. The active work of growth. Here's what Lahaye emphasizes that many people miss. Growth doesn't happen by accident. You must actively strengthen your weaknesses, or they will sabotage you. But, and this is important, that growth must be paced, realistic, and supported. Consider Ada, whose dominant sanguine trait is extroversion. She loves organizing events, meeting new people, starting projects. She brings energy and enthusiasm everywhere she goes. But her weakness is a lack of follow-through and a tendency toward impulsivity. She commits to projects she can't possibly complete. She makes promises she forgets. She starts things with tremendous energy and abandons them halfway through. To strengthen her weakness, Ada doesn't try to become a different person. She doesn't force herself to be methodical or cautious. Instead, she builds scaffolding around her nature. She commits to finishing one project at a time, structures a clear schedule, and puts deadlines in writing. She finds an accountability partner, a friend or colleague, who checks in weekly on progress. She pairs up with someone more structured, perhaps a choleric or melancholy colleague, who helps maintain momentum and follow through. She practices daily reflection, asking herself, what am I committing to today? And what am I not committing to? Over time, Ada builds a habit of completing tasks, even when the initial excitement fades. That doesn't mean losing her joyous, social nature. It means bringing it under better direction. She becomes someone who can be enthusiastic and reliable. Her temperament isn't the problem. It's her wisdom in managing it that changes everything. The research is clear. Consistent small steps, external support, clear structure, and regular self-awareness are the scaffolding that allows temperament to evolve. You don't outgrow your wiring. You learn to conduct it like an orchestra conductor learns to shape an instrument sound. Finding your type, the mirror test. To make all of this practical, you need to know your own temperament. Lahaye includes a self-assessment tool, but the real work is honest reflection. Take time to consider. Under pressure, do you push forward or pull back? When you're excited, do you move quickly or do you need to think it through? When you're hurt, do you lash out, withdraw, shut down, or seek to smooth things over? How do you recharge? Through people or through solitude? But here's the key. Don't take the test as a final verdict. Take it as a starting point for conversation. Ask people close to you, your spouse, a best friend, a mentor, how they see you. Sometimes others perceive patterns we can't see in ourselves. Over time, as you grow and develop, your expression of your temperament may shift. A choleric person might become more thoughtful. A phlegmatic person might become more proactive. The underlying wiring doesn't change, but how you conduct it does. Chitty took a temperament assessment and scored as strongly choleric, with secondary phlegmatic traits. He recognized in himself the decisiveness and leadership drive. He naturally takes charge, makes calls, pushes toward outcomes. But he also noticed a calmness, a tendency to pause and consider, that tempered his intensity. He asked his spouse and close friends to reflect on what they saw. Their feedback helped him understand that his phlegmatic secondary was actually his secret strength. It kept his choleric intensity from becoming tyrannical. Over the years, as Chitty grew in patience and emotional awareness, he noticed his choleric edges softening, not disappearing. He's still decisive and driven, but expressed with more grace. The test wasn't a label that trapped him. It was a tool that sparked insight and open conversation. Vocation, where your wiring becomes your asset. One of the most practical applications of temperament understanding is in work and calling. Certain temperaments are naturally predisposed toward particular roles and fields. This doesn't mean you must work in a field aligned with your temperament, but it does mean that alignment makes work sustainable and joyful rather than constantly exhausting. Sanguines typically thrive in roles with people, speaking, and helping, sales, ministry, counseling, event planning, public relations. They're energized by interaction and variety. Cholerics suit leadership, management, entrepreneurship, and roles requiring decisive action and vision casting. They're energized by results and control. Melancholies often excel in research, design, writing, arts, counseling, and analysis. They're energized by depth and meaning. Phlegmatics fit steady, relational, support roles, operations, human resources, customer service, caregiving. They're energized by harmony and helping. But Lahaye cautions, temperament is not destiny. You can succeed in many fields with awareness, effort, and the right support structure. The key is paying attention to what energizes you versus what drains you. Not what you think you should enjoy, but what actually makes you feel alive over the long term. Eniola is a sanguine melancholy blend. She loves interacting with people, generating ideas, and connecting. But she also reflects deeply and cares about meaning and quality. She tried a corporate sales role, thinking her people skills would make her successful. And technically, she was good at it. But the constant pressure of quotas, the focus on numbers over relationships, the lack of depth, it drained her. She felt hollow. She eventually moved into content marketing, a role that combined her people skills, working with clients and cross-functional teams, with her need for depth, writing, research, strategy. She could generate ideas, collaborate, but also think deeply about meaning and impact. The work energized her rather than depleting her. Her friend Samson, a pure choleric, took on a project management role at a tech startup. He loved pushing toward deadlines, driving results, making decisions, and moving things forward. But after a few years, he realized he wanted more autonomy and bigger stakes. He started his own venture. His choleric wiring found its perfect expression in entrepreneurship. If they had ignored their temperament, they might have stayed longer in ill-suited jobs, facing constant frustration, wondering if they were cut out for work. But temperament awareness acted like a compass, orienting them toward vocations where their wiring was an asset, not something to constantly fight against. The lesson isn't that you should only do work aligned with your temperament. It's that you should understand your wiring well enough to either find roles that leverage it or build support structures that compensate for misalignment. A melancholy person can succeed in sales, but they might need a different approach than a sanguine. A phlegmatic can lead, but they might need to build in accountability structures to move at the pace their organization requires. The team effect: how temperament diversity creates strength. In any team or organization, understanding temperaments improves everything: task assignment, communication, conflict resolution, and overall synergy. Leaders who adapt rather than demand uniformity get the best from people. In a marketing team, the manager blessing is choleric. She expects quick decisions, pushes hard, and moves fast. One of her team members, Tund, is melancholy, careful, slow to commit until data is solid, thorough in his analysis. Blessing, unaware of temperament, sees Tund as lazy or resistant. She interprets his caution as lack of commitment. Conflict escalates. Tund feels pressured and misunderstood. Blessing feels frustrated and unsupported. But if Blessing understood Tund's temperament, everything would shift. She might assign him research and quality assurance tasks, where his careful nature is an asset. She could give earlier notice for decisions, allowing him time to prepare and think. She could frame feedback differently: not "you're too slow," but "I need your analysis by Friday so we can move forward Monday." She could acknowledge his thoroughness as a strength, not a weakness. Meanwhile, another teammate, Olu, is sanguine. He excels at brainstorming, generating enthusiasm, and social outreach. A third, Zainab, is phlegmatic, steady, relational, good at maintaining processes and keeping things calm. This mix: choleric leader, melancholy analyst, sanguine connector, phlegmatic stabilizer, can become a powerhouse team if each role is understood and respected. The choleric drives vision and results. The melancholy ensures quality and catches risks. The sanguine energizes and builds relationships. The phlegmatic maintains process and harmony. Each person's wiring becomes the team's strength rather than a source of friction. The alternative, demanding everyone be like the leader or trying to make everyone balanced, typically backfires. People feel judged for their nature. They either conform inauthentically, which is exhausting, or resist, which creates conflict. But when a leader says, "I see you. I understand how you're wired. I'm going to place you where you thrive and communicate in a way that respects your nature," something shifts. People feel seen. They perform better. They stay longer. The emotional landscape: fear, anger, and the wiring beneath. Emotions don't emerge randomly. They're rooted in temperament. Different temperaments are predisposed to different emotional struggles. Understanding this helps you recognize patterns and intervene early. Sanguines and cholerics are more likely to struggle with anger. Their wiring toward action and intensity can, under stress, manifest as aggression, impatience, or harsh words. Melancholies and phlegmatics are more vulnerable to fear, anxiety, and worry. Their reflective, cautious nature can spiral into rumination and paralysis. But here's what matters: emotional maturity is not the absence of these feelings. It's knowing how they arise, naming them clearly, and channeling them constructively. Rita is a choleric employee. Under stress, she lashes out at teammates when deadlines slip or when she perceives incompetence. She notices that when she's tired or overloaded, her anger flares more easily. Instead of just trying to be nicer, she begins to track her anger moments in a journal. She notes the triggers: missing data, interruptions, people not following through. She starts to see the pattern. Then she builds a protocol. When she feels anger rising, she counts to 10. She takes 3 deep breaths. She pauses before speaking. She asks herself, what am I actually frustrated about? Often, it's not the person, it's the situation. She learns to say, I'm frustrated because we don't have the data we need. Let's figure out how to get it, instead of, you didn't do your job. Over time, Rita doesn't stop being choleric. She doesn't lose her drive or intensity, but she learns to express it in ways that motivate rather than wound. Her team notices. They're more willing to work hard for her because they don't fear her anger. Samuel is phlegmatic. He often procrastinates or avoids risks because he fears failure. His mind generates catastrophic scenarios. What if I mess this up? What if people criticize me? What if I'm not good enough? He notices that fear thoughts often precede avoidance. He starts to name the fear explicitly. I'm afraid of failure. Just naming it reduces its power. He then practices gradual exposure, taking small risks in low-stakes situations. He tells a mentor about his fears instead of hiding them. He learns to replace catastrophic thinking with more balanced thoughts. I might not do this perfectly, but I can probably do it well enough. And if I fail, I'll learn something. Over time, Samuel doesn't become fearless. He becomes someone who acts despite fear, who recognizes fear as information rather than a stop sign. Pressure. When temperament intensifies. Stress and pressure don't create new behavior. They magnify existing wiring. Under pressure. A choleric becomes more domineering or abrasive. A melancholy slips into despair or paralysis. A sanguine flees into distraction. A phlegmatic disengages or shuts down. Knowing this in advance means you can prepare. You can build protocols, communicate expectations, and support each other through storms. During a company crisis, the CEO, choleric, pushes everyone hard. The finance lead, melancholy, freezes, fearing one wrong move could collapse systems. The marketing person, sanguine, tries to rally morale but glosses over details. The operations manager, phlegmatic, slows down, trying to keep calm but lagging. But if the team had preemptively agreed on stress protocols, the crisis could be managed with far less chaos. They might have daily brief check-ins, which helps the melancholy feel informed and the choleric feel heard. They might rotate roles under pressure, so no one burns out. They might build in cool-down breaks, which helps the choleric not dominate, the sanguine not flee, the melancholy not spiral, the phlegmatic not shut down. They might explicitly agree. Under pressure, we each tend to do X. Let's watch for that and remind each other gently. Knowing your pressure response doesn't eliminate stress, but it means you're not blindsided by your own reactions. You can brace, plan, and prevent collapse. Depression. When temperament becomes clinical. Depression is more common among melancholy and phlegmatic types, but it can affect anyone. Lahaye emphasizes a crucial distinction. Depression is not simply a bad mood. It must be taken seriously. It's important to distinguish between temporary despondence, sadness that passes, and clinical depression, a persistent state that impairs functioning. Both can happen to anyone, regardless of temperament. But temperament awareness helps you recognize risk factors and know when to seek help. A melancholy person, Ada, begins to feel drained, negative, unable to find joy in things she usually enjoys. She notices she's isolating, overthinking, sleeping poorly, rejecting social contact. Her negative self-talk intensifies. I'm not good enough. Nothing will get better. I'm a burden. Instead of dismissing this as just her temperament, she takes it seriously. She reaches out to a trusted friend and shares what she's experiencing. She seeks counseling and spiritual support. Her friend, sanguine, helps pull her into small social interactions, not forcing but gently inviting. Her counselor helps her reframe thought patterns and identify cognitive distortions. She commits to exercise, maintains a schedule, gets light exposure, and prioritizes rest. Over time, Ada recovers. Her temperament may always lean toward introspection and careful analysis, but she's learned to recognize when that becomes depression and to intervene early. The key lesson: temperament may predispose you toward certain emotional struggles, but it doesn't enslave you. Depression must be taken seriously, and temperamental insight gives you early warning signs. But healing often requires external support, therapy, community, sometimes medication. Not just self-help or spiritual practices alone. Hostility and bitterness, the path to repair. Chronic anger and hostility often hide deeper wounds. Someone lashing out is usually protecting hurt, fear, shame, or unmet needs. Dealing with the root often dissolves the mask of aggression. In a marriage, one partner, choleric, frequently lashes out when stressed, saying sharp words that sting. The other partner, phlegmatic, has two choices: react defensively, which escalates, or pause and go deeper. The phlegmatic partner decides to pause, not reply immediately, and ask calmly, "What's hurting you?" This simple question shifts everything. Instead of defending against the attack, they're inviting vulnerability. Over time, the choleric partner learns to name what's actually going on. "I'm scared we're not going to make it. I feel like you don't care." The sharp words were a defense against deeper fear. They also build relational norms. Timeouts when things get heated, not stonewalling, but a genuine pause. Safe words to signal when someone is getting triggered, and later calm reconciliation where they actually address what happened. Hostility rarely wins love or respect. But slowing down, seeking root hurts, and extending forgiveness are the path to relational repair. Love and marriage. When temperaments collide, people with contrasting temperaments often feel attracted. The outgoing sanguine drawn to calm phlegmatic, the decisive choleric to sensitive melancholy. The attraction is real, but it often breeds conflict because each misunderstands the other's wiring. Mary, sanguine, marries John, melancholy. Mary desires frequent social interaction, spontaneity, novelty. John prefers quiet evenings, reflection, depth. Mary feels John is distant and withdrawn. John feels Mary is superficial and scattered. Without temperamental insight, resentment builds. But if they understand their wiring, everything can shift. Mary can give John downtime without taking it personally. John can plan occasional shared social events and push himself to engage. They can negotiate their schedule. Perhaps 2 social events a month that Mary plans, and 2 quiet weekends that John plans. They can learn to appreciate each other's gifts. Mary helps John be more open and take risks. John helps Mary go deeper and think more carefully. Over time, what seemed like incompatibility becomes complementarity. Their differences, properly understood, make them stronger together. Sexual intimacy is both physical and emotional, and temperament influences both. A phlegmatic partner might need more emotional closeness and safe conversation before physical intimacy. A choleric partner might expect directness and initiation. A sanguine might desire novelty and spontaneity. A melancholy might need emotional safety before vulnerability. Without awareness, partners misinterpret each other. A husband, choleric, expects his wife, phlegmatic, to initiate sex. When she doesn't, he feels rejected. She feels pressured. He becomes frustrated. She withdraws more. But once they discuss their temperamental wiring, husband learns to slow down, ask gently, provide emotional connection first. Wife learns to be more open and express her desires. Their harmony in sexual rhythm improves because they're not fighting each other's nature. They're learning each other's language. Spiritual life, aligning calling with wiring. In spiritual contexts, temperament and spiritual gifts often align. Sanguines might manifest gifts like evangelism and encouragement. Cholerics might lead, administrate, and organize. Melancholies might teach, counsel, and write. Phlegmatics might serve, support, and show mercy. The key is aligning calling with wiring. Spiritual growth is more sustainable when you're not constantly fighting your nature. Esther is melancholy and gifted in teaching. She writes devotionals, conducts small group Bible study, reflects deeply on Scripture. She thrives in that role. When the church asks her to lead large events or coordinate logistics, she feels drained. But when they honor her wiring and place her in teaching and writing roles, she flourishes. Peter is sanguine. He loves sharing his faith, greeting people, building relationships, and creating welcoming community. He excels in outreach and hospitality roles. When asked to handle administrative details or deep theological study, he struggles. But in his lane, he's invaluable. Their different strengths complement each other spiritually and practically. The church needs both the depth that Esther brings and the connection that Peter creates. The broader principle: don't force yourself into spiritual roles that resist your temperament. Instead, stretch gently. A phlegmatic might develop more proactivity through spiritual discipline and accountability. A melancholy might learn to share their gifts more broadly. But the foundation should be alignment, not constant resistance. Transformation, the spirit-controlled life. The ultimate goal in Lahaye's framework is what he calls a spirit-controlled temperament, allowing spiritual maturity and intentional growth to guide your wiring rather than letting your wiring dominate you. When your temperament is under spiritual influence, or in secular terms, under conscious intention and wisdom, your gifts are maximized and your weaknesses are minimized. This doesn't mean becoming someone you're not. A choleric won't become laid back. A phlegmatic won't become aggressive. But a choleric can become decisive and compassionate. A phlegmatic can become calm and proactive. Mary is phlegmatic. Her calm nature is genuinely a gift. It steadies others, creates peace, helps her listen well. But without intentionality, she drifts. She procrastinates on important decisions. Her spiritual life becomes passive. She assumes things will work out rather than taking responsibility. She commits to a daily devotional routine, nothing elaborate, just 15 minutes each morning. She joins a prayer accountability group where she's asked weekly, "How are you growing spiritually?" She serves in a consistent relational role, mentoring younger women. That requires her to show up regularly. She sets one goal each month. Perhaps, I will initiate one difficult conversation, or I will make a decision about my career direction. Over time, her spiritual life ceases to be passive drift. She becomes intentional. Her phlegmatic temperament becomes an ally, not a liability. Her calmness now serves others because it's paired with proactivity. Her reflection now leads to action. Bringing it together, the practical path forward. Understanding your temperament isn't about labeling yourself or others. It's about gaining wisdom. It's about recognizing that behind every reaction, your anger, your fear, your withdrawal, your impulsivity, is a deeper wiring that you can work with rather than fight. Here's what you can do starting today. First, identify your wiring. Take a temperament assessment honestly, without bias. Ask people close to you how they see you. Notice patterns. What energizes you? What drains you? Under pressure, what's your default response? Second, map your strengths and shadows. Write down 2 columns, strengths/gifts and weaknesses/dangers. Don't minimize either. Your gifts are real. Your vulnerabilities are real. Both matter. Third, pick one area to work on. Not everything at once. Maybe it's I want to follow through better, or I want to manage my anger, or I want to take more risks. Pick one. Set a small, concrete goal. Build accountability. Fourth, learn others' wiring. In your relationships, work, marriage, friendship, parenting, slow down and learn how others are wired. Don't assume your way is the only way. Flex your communication style. Place people where they thrive. Fifth, embrace growth as a lifelong practice. Your temperament doesn't lock you into a fixed future. Over time, maturity, intentional practice, reflection, and spiritual discipline, or secular equivalents, can reshape how your wiring expresses itself. You can become more than your default. We rarely act in a vacuum. Behind every reaction, our anger, our fear, our withdrawal, our impulsivity, is a deeper wiring, our temperament. Understanding this doesn't promise to erase your wiring or make you into someone you're not. It promises something better: self-knowledge, wisdom, and genuine growth. Your temperament is not your prison. It's the soil out of which your best self can grow. Today, you can begin. Find your wiring. Know your strengths. Confront your shadows. Take one intentional step toward maturity. Over time, as you work with your nature rather than against it, you'll discover that the very traits that once frustrated you can become your greatest assets. The question isn't, "Why do I always react like that?" anymore. The question becomes, "How can I conduct this wiring wisely?" And that's a question you're now equipped to answer. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more wisdom that fuels growth.